We've got to the second Sunday after Pentecost, or first Sunday after Trinity. And our theme from the lectionary today is the Lord's call, so about call, vocation. Let's start with some national traits. Sometimes we're called an island race as Britons. And that's very true. It's a fact. There are a lot of islands. If you think of Britain and Ireland, there are a good number of populated islands. It's said that there are 189, and of those, about half belong to Scotland, 97 of them. So it's unequivocal that we're an island race, an island people. And here we are just off the northwest edge of the continent, plonked in the North Sea on one side and the Atlantic on the other. An island race. It's also said that we're a nation of gardeners. And I looked it up the other day, something like 87% of British households have a garden. Now, these will vary tremendously from a few square feet to acres and acres. But it's said that we're a nation of gardeners. We love our gardens. And something very recent for this year with lockdown, with COVID, it's a statistic they've come up with is that 45% of us as a nation, we've taken refuge in our gardens. That's basically how we dealt with lockdown. We've taken to our gardens, whether they're tiny or whether they're vast. We've got in the garden. And we've done this more than anything else, apparently. We've done this more than cooking or reading. Gardening has been our number one favourite pastime during lockdown. So most of us have a sort of rudimentary knowledge of gardening. Some absolute experts out there, of course, but then people like myself, a bit of knowledge of the basics. And we know a little bit about plants. And we know that they're rather sensitive, generally speaking, obviously some more than others. But you need some good ingredients to help our plants flourish. And those good ingredients, obviously water. That's pretty basic. Say 80% of plants are made up with water. You've got to get the watering right. You need your sun. That certainly helps. And getting the heat right. The warmer it is, the more they grow, and so on. And of course, soil. You need to have the right soil for your plants to flourish, good nutrients and all the rest of it. So getting the conditions right for your plants to do well, to grow and bloom and so on. We know that's important. And I want you to hold that thought when it comes to call, vocation, and essentially asking the question, with God's call, where do I flourish? Our gospel today comes from the 9th chapter of Matthew, from verse 35, and runs into chapter 10 to verse 8. And you'll know it. It's Jesus in Matthew's gospel calling the apostles. And it's lovely, isn't it? Beginning of chapter 10, well, I think it's lovely. Calls them by name, and they're named, and we're even told what some of them actually do. So Matthew, the tax collector. It's very personal, it's very intimate. Calling the 12 disciples, the 12 apostles, to follow him. And as it says in verse 1 of chapter 10, gave them authority over unclean spirits to cast them out and to cure every disease and every sickness. So certainly a healing ministry there, which we'll look at when we get to the Feast of St. Luke, which falls in October, and it's on a Sunday this year, so we'll be thinking about healing. But call, vocation. Quite often we associate this with priesthood, but it's by no means unique to the priesthood, to holy orders. Sometimes I think of my sister Tess when she was ordained deacon at Christ Church Cathedral, Oxford. I remember that service very well. And Tessie saying to me, well, I guess it takes about 10 years to work out how you're going to exercise your diaconal and later priestly ministry. And I think Tess was probably right about that. A decade, so it's very loose, but quite a long period of time at least. And I know for Tess, as most of us do, once we're ordained, we go to a parish, that's our context, and we work as a curate, a trainee, under a parish priest, vicar, rector. And that's what Tess did, and she didn't like it at all. Parish ministry was not for her. So she tried doing what our mum did. She went on the staff of the Theological College. Mum was down in Chichester. Tessie was on the staff at Cuddesdon just south of Oxford. And she taught on the staff there for a little while. It was definitely Mum's thing, but not so much Tessa's thing, even though she preferred it to parish ministry. So, third crack at what this priestly ministry was going to be for her, and she ended up in a hospice. So, serving the parish in South Oxfordshire, she went to North Oxfordshire. And the hospice worked extremely well. I'm not doing that now, but for a number of years, Tess flourished in that environment. That was the right soil for her. She got the right sun and water, and she really blossomed, and she loved that very intense one-to-one work, being with people as their earthly pilgrimage came to a close. All of us have a unique calling. And if we think plants are a little bit difficult, and you need to work a bit to put them even, say, in the right part of your garden, and here in William Street, something quite important, say, dealing with the wind and all of that, think how much more complex that is when it comes to ourselves as human beings. We're deeply complicated, highly sophisticated animals. And to find the right place for us, with the right people, in the right context, and so on, is a big challenge. It's a big ask. We come to this theme time and time again about call, vocation. We certainly pick it up on the fourth Sunday in Eastertide, Good Shepherd Sunday, which are now also called Vocation Sunday. And there are other times through the year when we reflect on this theme, because it's hugely important about God, what God is calling us to do. So we discern. We've been using the resources recently of the Ignatian Spirituality Centre. So the Ignatian spiritual exercises, we particularly associate that with St. Ignatius of Loyola, which is essentially about discernment, listening to the still small voice, what is God saying to us? and try to flesh that out as to what context am I going to exercise my ministry, where am I going to live out my life, which of course fluctuates, changes as we grow and mature, blossom as human beings, and so on. So discernment, call, vocation. These are ongoing questions as we grow, as develop, as we tune into God. We give thanks for the call of the apostles, Jesus calling them by name to follow him, to proclaim the gospel, to heal. This is our calling as well. How we do that, where we do it, what's particularly unique to us to give us that distinct and personal response to God's call. These are things which we need to discern and work out as we make our way drawing closer to God himself. May God bless us in our calling, in our vocation. May we flourish as human beings. May we become mature Christians. May we each play our role as we contribute to the Christian community at St. Michael's. And the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.